This is Warden's Watch, episode 30. And today, for the first time, we're gonna get into this podcast. John Norris and I are podcasting together. John from California, me from New Hampshire.
Coast to coast, man. We're doing it. Thin Green Line is in action. This is exciting, Wayne.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very exciting. No, I'm psyched, and things just seem to flow really good with us, John. Once we get on a subject, I think we both have. You have a West Coast opinion, I have an East Coast opinion, but it seems to be the middle.
Yeah, it really does. You know, we find a lot of like-mindedness everywhere between us throughout the country that we're going to dive into with this show. So it's going to be fun.
Game wardens are cut from the same cloth of same cloth, maybe different personalities, different skill sets. You know, the one thing I'm finding, this skill set of fixing things is going away, and kids haven't, and it's my fault too, because when I go to fix something, it's so much problems to bring my kid in here. Fault that I haven't brought him in. So now I don't think he enjoys it, but every time we have to work on the tractor or something, I drag him along just so he knows what kind of wrenches or what, and go get the ball peen hammer. That was the other day. A ball peen hammer, what's that? Well, hopefully I only have to show it to you once.
Yep. Starting to learn is always good. Yeah.
No, and it's on the teacher a lot of the times, because that was bad on me because I didn't teach it. And I've been out there with wardens that I'm trying to teach, and I forgot that lesson, and then I get mad.
Yeah.
And they're like, you never taught us that.
You never taught us that, man. I need to see an example. I do best by seeing, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. So I don't know if you have that issue or not, but sometimes I get ahead of myself, and I always think that I've taught them.
Yeah, there's a fine line between teaching effectively and then doing it yourself, right? And having them kind of watch and go along. And sometimes when speed is of the essence and efficiency is an issue, sometimes I jump in and do a little too much and do more doing than teaching. But, you were an FTO for a lot of years, and I had a lot of good FTO trainees before I promoted. And I remember that was kind of the ultimate test of how effective we are as teachers, when we kind of pull back, watch them grow, watch them make the mistakes we made and different ones, and go back and kind of relive their experiences and just try to fill in the blanks and not do it for them, but dress them for a little bit of success. Let them fail forward with those minor mistakes, right? That aren't officer safety, major catastrophic errors. And that was the litmus test, I think, for me as an effective teacher throughout all the teaching I've done in my career. And I know you had a lot of that too.
Absolutely. That's funny you say that, because you're right. You got to let them go, and you got to let them do it. And sometimes I found out that they did it better, and sometimes they looked at it from a different angle. Especially poachers, they'd always want my opinion. And I'm like, I don't want to give it to you, because I want you to look at that problem from a different angle, from a fresh perspective, because I haven't been able to catch that guy, and maybe a fresh perspective can.
Yeah, it absolutely helps. And you're not giving away the farm, and you're letting them really dive into a discomfort zone. My thing is, I just always I'm a team guy, right? So I always want to help whoever I'm with. I want to make their life easier, make the job easier, safer. I want to, take some of the burden away. But it was kind of hard at first, especially my first cycle as a FTO versus being a trainee or a solo warden, to step back and let their minds work through problems and not want to go in and solve that problem for them, thinking they're missing something, kind of being that, kind of controlling, teaching entity, if you will. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line. And I know we both have matured as instructors by learning to back away, learning to get that fresh perspective from them, and learning from them ourselves.
Right. And letting, when you hit that team effort, everybody has their job, and usually everybody knows what the others are good at. Excuse me. So, and letting, even younger guys do their job that they're good at, and just, I guess being a good supervisor and stepping aside and letting that team work.
Yeah, for sure. And I know when you fast forward way to the end of my career, which we talked about on a couple of your episodes as we met, when our marijuana enforcement team and our special ops unit was put together, I had so many skilled professional guys that were so good at certain skill sets and good at their craft in certain areas. it wasn't even stepping in at all. It was, I defer to you. You're a master welder and fabricator to build this, device we need for tactical training for, on
Mm,
the ocean, or we got to fix a quad trailer. We got to, improvise in the field on a helicopter skid, whatever the case may be. And just watching those guys work is just, I mean, it's just magic, man.
yeah.
Somebody that's that good at it and that confident and really empowered to go do that job. And they feel very, fortunate that they're filling that niche on a team environment. And that's a fine line, right, Wayne? We're solo game wardens. We got to do everything. Usually we don't have a partner from a patrol standpoint. But when we became FTOs, we were two-man team,
Right.
for however long that was, a month, 2 months, whatever the cycles were in your state or my state or anywhere in between. And you need to develop that teamwork now, especially in today's law enforcement world, when we are jumping in with other agencies live and having to fill and flow with our skill sets. So it just goes back to that whole teaching formation and being solo when we need to, but being able to jump into a unit and shine where we're supposed to shine for the benefit of the whole unit. Pretty cool.
There's so many facets that we as game wardens can fill. I ran the airboat team in New Hampshire, and you took on this special ops training, and I'm kind of jealous because there's I would have loved to do something like that, and yet it's so hard to figure out. There's only so much time, and it's hard to figure out what you want to do, what your niches are, and if I had to go back, I'd probably do it differently, just to have different experiences.
Right, right. I certainly would. There's things, the 6 years I had after co-developing the Met unit and running it and doing every aspect within it, there's certainly things I would have done a little different looking back. But what I learned at the end of my career was it was just a flood, such a flood of knowledge when you had that many people to work with and to supervise and also be partners with and to look out for. It was quite a challenge, even 25 years in deep, and it just goes to, we know as game wardens and as first responders everywhere in other agencies, you never stop learning on this job. Every day
Right.
is something new, and I probably learned as much, if not more, that last 5 years than even did my first five. So that's kind of eye-opening, and people going into the profession and the career or there now, just be ready for that. It's never going to end on the learning phase.
Right. No, and there's one thing that I still to this day I just love that I did, and new people getting into this type of job, was working for the National Park Service. I bounced all over the country and did different things everywhere.
Right.
Worked in West Virginia, did whitewater rafting, became a whitewater ranger. The most adrenaline I think I've ever had in my life, whitewater
Right.
rafting.
Oh
And
yeah.
then I went to Wisconsin, to Lake Superior. I ran a 25-foot whaler, got some very intense boat training up there, which was priceless throughout my whole career. It was priceless. And then I ended up on the beach at Assateague Island National Seashore on the Virginia side and dealt with a ton of people issues because the beach, uh, piping plovers, living on the beach. It's just, when people ask me if you go back and do something, and, I'm like, being a park ranger, it was a law enforcement park ranger. You get to live and work in the best places in the United States. And it's just a cool. So it's
Yeah,
like a game as you move around the country.
yeah, it is. On federal level, that's what's so cool. And I mean, look at the diversity of experiences you had before coming over to a state and being a
Mm,
game warden, up there in the Northeast. It was invaluable. And I
right.
know for me, it was kind of similar. I didn't have a federal job before the state job, but I traveled all over the country. I backpacked, I hiked, I rafted the Grand Canyon multiple times, hiked the Grand Canyon, just being kind of that conservation adventurer in and around the development to become a game warden. And one thing, when I became a game warden, I got to do every aspect of what California has to offer. And being a diverse state with a big marine enforcement component, because we're right there on the Pacific Ocean coastline, did a lot of offshore, far distance offshore patrol, a boarding officer on an ocean vessel, did a lot of inland lake patrols on the smaller vessels, got to work with some of the best boat crews, I think, in the state for sure, if not part of the country. And that was one facet that I wish I had done more of. I
Mm,
did enough of it as a part-time boarding officer. I wasn't, assigned to a boat. I always had an inland district, but I'm grateful for that time. And looking back, all the special operations stuff was definitely what I was meant to do, and it was a forte, if you will. I'm very lucky, But I miss the boat, man. I miss getting out on the ocean and, working Catalina Island with the guys, 50 to 100 miles offshore, and everything from lobster openers to rockfish to salmon, and, Homeland Security protection details that kind of roped in around the resource crimes. The ocean's magic, and being on a boat with skilled operators, just a treat. It was fun.
Yeah, you sound like that typical California boy. You had a surfboard too, didn't you?
Yeah, well, sort of. I had a boogie board. Wasn't really a big surfer, but yeah, I was that coastal guy for sure growing up here. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I did that it still instills in me today, and I still do it with is work with Operation Game Thief, which trying to get that
Yes.
information and
Yep.
from the general public, working with the general public, and I know that you get some really good forte of working with the general public as becoming an outdoor woman and all the stuff that you did, and this Operation Game Thief program for me, and then working with International Wildlife Crime Stoppers has been huge, and we just learned about this elk poaching case in Utah. And I just, as soon as I heard about it, I'm like, that's something we need to talk about.
Yeah, that was one of those cases. And we had that conversation yesterday with Chad over in Utah. It was amazing to see how fired up they're getting about this case and why. And it was just the same, I'm sure, that you would have over on the East Coast. And this is the case we talked about yesterday with him on this elk poaching deal. It was one of those like top 5 cases that we look back on a career and go, when you have the most deliberate, intentional, and wasting, just disgusting poachers killing trophy bulls in an area you don't even hunt by the ski resorts, in the Park City area of Utah with 22 long rifles. I mean, that's as bad as it gets. So pull out all the stops. Let's catch these guys. And they're doing a killer job on this investigation, as you and I learned, and getting a little more help from the public than you and I are used to, given the digital age, right?
Absolutely. That can be overwhelming for a game warden when social media starts exploding, when the calls are rolling in. And the amount of information that you get is credible and relevant is very small. And even as a warden, much of that information and so much of it, A, you may already know, or B, isn't really relevant.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's what they're dealing with. But just without getting into details, you can tell they're doing the fundamental, hardcore, and just everybody wants this guy caught tomorrow. And that's what I got to tell everybody. Put on the brakes. We talk about frozen elk that we're dealing with necropsies.
Yeah, and this is not an investigation. That's a simple like license undersized fish or one animal that's not tagged case. This isn't a slam dunk quick pinch. This is going to be a forensic challenge, right? And like we talked about yesterday, you just said frozen elk carcasses. This is happening in the dead of winter. Conditions are rough. Evidence is tough to find, and leads are kind of thin. The way this thing works. So with the GoFundMe page that has been generated on this case that we're going to dive into more when the full podcast is aired, being able to help this case out by getting the word out through our Thin Green Line podcast is something we never had in your career, my career. I mean, this was unheard of that we could talk about this from a game warden specific forum that the entire public can listen to and maybe help this case along just by sharing information and force multiplying. So it's exciting, and we want to catch these guys and help Utah do it any way we can.
Right. Absolutely. The GoFundMe page it's really important. The public, getting involved with this elk case is really important. And you know what just hits me now is these guys are trying to do interviews, and we have this coronavirus going around.
Right.
And they got to talk to these people. That's part of this huge investigation is talking, interacting with the public. And we just heard yesterday that they're trying to down, if you don't have to contact people, don't contact people, which I get. I'm sure game wardens are limiting their contact as well, and we have this investigation go on. What a monkey wrench to throw in an investigation that you're not really supposed to be interacting with people when you have interviews to do.
Yeah, it's the worst timing. I mean, there's no good timing for coronavirus, a worldwide pandemic, horrible thing that we're going through, but we're all dealing with it. We're unifying as a country, and so far so good. But for a case like this, that evidence trail is going to get cold quick. right?
Mhm.
Conditions are bad, more snow's coming, you're going to have a spring thaw, things are going to deteriorate. Colder weather, witnesses aren't out and about, running around in sunshine out on the slopes, and you're right. Our wardens out there are having to limit their exposure for safety reasons, but they're not going to stop.
No,
We as game wardens, we're as passionate about our wildlife crimes as is the public about other mainline crimes that all of us in the law enforcement first responder circle got to deal with. And it brings up the question of the tenacity of the thin green line. We don't stop because of a pandemic. We're still going to solve wildlife crimes safely, of course. We might be slowed down. And as you said, perfectly, we're going to limit our exposure and not, unduly put ourselves in harm's way. But we're not going to stop, because these guys need to be caught. And with the help of the public, even from, kind of quarantining in place, we can do a lot with the digital age, with media, with the GoFundMe, with Instagram, with Facebook, with just using our phones and not having to contact face to face and maybe get some leads.
right. And we're going to delve a lot more into this in the Thin Green Line podcast that we're going to be doing off of Patreon, and we're going to get right into a lot of the different things that we can do as game wardens, we can do as outdoorsmen, the types of things that we can prepare for. So we're going to the Thin Green Line. That's the podcast. And listen to our other podcast, The Thin Green Line, because we're going to put some time into this and we're going to talk about it. And I think we're going to share some cool stuff as from an outdoors perspective, as a game warden's perspective. From fans of Northwoods Law, maybe they can learn a few things that, are pretty cool just to have in your house. No matter where you live, you can prepare for a pandemic. It's not that hard, and you can be pretty comfortable for quite a long time.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, since the advent of wild justice on the West Coast and Northwoods Law on the East Coast, and these game warden reality shows that have really exposed what we do more comprehensively, we have so many people that are fans of those shows. And even though they're not necessarily going to be a game warden, they're part of the Thin Green Line too, right, Wayne? Because they're our eyes and ears, and they're protecting our wildlife, waterways, and wild lands. So one thing that's so cool about our podcast, The Thin Green Line, is we're going to be able to take direct questions and direct topic ideas from our listeners and dive in further. And you
Yes.
mentioned the Patreon program where certain memberships are going to allow some one-on-one, specific group discussions via a video conference, if you will. We're going to have a lot of different opportunities as this thing morphs and evolves, and really try to be a little more catering to that Thin Green Line supporter within and without of the profession of being a game warden. It's going to be exciting, and we'd like to see it develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I think of, and you've already done this, is the basic of surviving a pandemic, let's say, is having a knife, and you've created something like that too. That I think, like I said, you don't have to be an operator, you don't have to be a game warden to have a really good knife, and to have someone with experience like you develop this. So I was hoping you could talk about and share this whole knife and the collaboration and everything, because I think Wardens Watch listeners would be excited to know about that, and have a game warden developed knife is pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's kind of cool. As bad as this pandemic is, what just dropped literally 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of been a soft drop for my Trailblazer. It's called the Trailblazer Thin Green Line Signature Knife. It's a folder. My call sign was Trailblazer my whole career, both in and out of special operations, and this was made specifically for the Thin Green Line of conservation officers and all first responders. I know, I'm sure you can share the same experience. I carried probably 7 or 8 everyday knives throughout my career that were always on my body, in a cargo pocket, somewhere on the uniform. And none of those knives had every tool I really felt I needed. They did, one job really well. They didn't have a tool to do another job. So one thing I found that I needed, and even for civilian use, whether you're, a mom with her kids in your car going to the grocery store, and you might need to break glass to get out of a stranded vehicle. You might have to cut a seatbelt, without putting a sharp blade up around an area when you're locked in with a seatbelt. So my Trailblazer is a folder. It's got a glass breaker that's very small and compact and out of the way. It's got a seatbelt or emergency harness or a webbing cutter. with a razor blade insert that does not affect the good edge on the D2 steel blade we have for the main blade. We have straight blades. We have partially serrated and straight blades. All the blades are drop points. So even though it is a survivor, quote unquote knife, you can skin and gut with it. Thin green line, we're going to need to be able to do that, survivalists. But it's an everyday carry for civilians as well. I collaborated with Mike Vellecamp, who is the founder of the B Knives Company. Great guy. We become great friends in the process. He started his career actually running the factory for Spyderco knives, which we all know, way back when he was 19 years old in Colorado. And so he's been designing knives for these big companies for the better part of 3 decades. And now he's got his own brand and his own shop. We've got a couple of retail stores, lifetime warranty on them, watertight, O-ring gasketed box with all the extra tools you never get in a knife, and a lifetime warranty. So excited, want to get, it's coming together nice, and the Trailblazers are now available, and we'll have a commercial up shortly for them, but we're going to be able to offer those to our listeners, and even give a little special, listener package the opportunity to be a big part of the Thin Green line and have that knife be part of that gift pack.
Yeah, we just had a big stop in that, John. So
Did we?
I think you were talking you were talking about the triple threat, I think, the package that we're going to put together for our members on Patreon.
Yeah, I'll go back into that. So the triple threat package that we're going to offer for our members on Patreon, you're going to get your choice of 4 different models of the Thin Green Line Trailblazer folding knife. We'll laser engrave signatures on the blade as well, so you'll get a signed knife that the general public doesn't get. You get a signed copy of my newest book, Hidden War, as well as a Thin Green Line wristband. I wear this 24/7 just to represent conservation, not just as an LEO, but now our followers are starting to try to buy these wristbands and things like that to represent what the Thin Green Line stands for all of us, and I'm going to throw that into that pack. So that's the triple threat Thin Green Line package you're going to get for a certain membership fee as a member of the Thin Green Line podcast through the Patreon program. And we're excited to get them out to anybody that wants to participate.
Yeah, well, it sounds like just a stellar knife for whether you're a first responder or just for everybody to have. I know my wife has in her car, she has a window breaker that's right there, and it's big, it's gaudy, and but she doesn't want. Every time I say, why don't you get rid of it? No, we're not. That window breaker is very, very important to her. So to put that on a knife that you have multiple things to do, I'm sure a seatbelt, if I told her about seatbelt cutter and a window breaker, I think my wife's going to buy your knife.
Well, we'll love to get her one, buddy. We want to keep our family safe. And like I said, even though it was designed with us first responder Thin Green Liners and law enforcement military in mind, it's light and compact for everyday carry. And actually, in the first run was 1,000 knives, and 400 of them are already sold, and we haven't even really launched the knife yet. And a majority of the sales are going to husbands are buying them for their wives to have in the car for that very thing that your wife's looking for. Break a window if I need to get the kids out and I'm over the side or stranded, and cut a seatbelt without using the blade to harm a body. The other thing that I want to mention on the knife that's kind of cool, and this is gonna touch all of us on the Thin Green Line as game wardens very deeply, is the first 100 of the knives were made, 150 actually, were purchased by our California Wildlife Officers Foundation, CalWOF. And that's a foundation for California game wardens that pick up the financial pieces that we just don't have in operations. They have a scholarship fund for wardens' children that they can compete for. And of course, if we had a fallen officer or a fallen canine, the foundation will pick up and help that. And they purchased 150 knives for one of our recently deceased game wardens, Jeff Glastone, who was only in his 30s. And I actually had the privilege of training him way back in the day in the academy. Wonderful young game warden out of San Diego. His career ended very short when he was terminally diagnosed with cancer. He died just before Christmas this last year in 2019. And those 150 knives were fundraisers with his badge number and his initials, JG713, laser engraved on the first 150 Trailblazers with a Thin Green Line color insert on a black handle, to go out to people that bought them. And all those funds went to the family. We generated over $10,000 for the Glastone family and sold out in a day and a half of those 150 knives. And that's really what this knife is about. It's about saving lives. It's about standing for something that matters, that we all can get behind in the thin green line. And we will have them available for a while longer before they go.
That's special. That makes it that much more special.
Yeah.
No. So, well, let's get into the rest of the podcast. We're going to, go to Utah and learn about this, relevant recent case that is currently ongoing. And maybe someone was out skiing in Park City and actually saw something and, has something to apply. International Wildlife Crime Stoppers has a number you can call and give information there. Utah has, an anti-poaching hotline as well that I'll see if I can get the number for, just in case that somebody out there was out there skiing and has a little bit of information. I know our podcast goes far and wide, but you just never know where that piece of information comes from.
Yeah, exactly, Wayne. And in this case, it was in such a non-hunting area. I mean, the ski resort was right across the street, so this is an area that gets a little bit of traffic, and it was dead of winter very recently. So this case might be cracked by a non-hunter, it very well might be. So hopefully we can get something generated from that, getting that word out.
Okay, so we're going to get right into that right now. So I have with me today Lieutenant Chad Betridge from the Utah DNR, along with my co-host, former Lieutenant John Norris out of California, and currently lives in Montana. John's going to be starting to join us on a lot of these talks, and we're going to be collaborating on a bunch of stuff. Right now, we are going to focus on an open case in Utah that caught my attention a couple weeks ago, and I think it catches a lot of sportsmen's attention when we see something so heinous and so bad, like this, Lieutenant. And can you just bring us back to that whole scene and walk us through this?
So initially, there was a whole lot of people in the area of Park City that would drive by and see these elk in a snow-covered field, and there were quite a few elk. There were a lot of bulls, a lot of mature bulls, and people kind of got a kick out of driving back and forth and watching the bulls. And then one day, the bulls weren't there. So a member of the public kind of just started doing a little bit of investigating and ended up finding a bull carcass, and then called our poaching tip line. Nice. And an officer in the area responded and ended up finding 6 bull carcasses. 5 of them were trophy bull elk in Utah, which means at least 6 points on one side, and the other one was a 5x5.
Wow, nice bulls.
Yeah, they were all mature bulls, and some of them were really nice bulls.
So can you share with us, I mean, I know sometimes with investigations, some things you don't want to share with the general public, some things you want to keep to yourself, so when that tip is, correct and stuff. Is there some details that, you can share? Were the 6 bulls all stacked up in one spot? Were they different areas?
No, they were all in the same general area. So it wasn't multiple instances. They were all killed relatively close to each other, and they were all shot. In fact, one of them, there were multiple firearms used to kill the animals, and we actually did pull a .22 caliber round out of one of the carcasses. So, wow. So which in normal situations, a .22 probably wouldn't kill an elk. It was just kind of hurt it, and kind of just it seems like something to I don't know the reason behind shooting an elk with a .22. So, right.
Oh, stupid.
I say, Chad, we're getting 2 minutes of the investigation that you can, like Wayne mentioned. What we saw here on the West Coast a lot was these under-caliber poachers, using way, light calibers for, like you said, an elk with a .22, but doing it because it was quiet, because it was compact, using like a Ruger 10-22 right out of the window, driving by with a little wind, they could hardly hear that shot. And just putting it behind the ear, or somewhere where they don't have to penetrate any heavy shoulder or tissue or muscle mass, and effectively doing it sometimes with multiple shots. But wonder if there's something like that going on here, just to be more deliberate, more stealthy, more intentional. Sure. Especially since they were trophy bulls. These guys, don't sound like poachers that are coming out just to get, meat when they're banging down bulls like that. Just heinous, deliberate guys.
For sure. And it's possible something like that did take place. Just the circumstances that we found, we only found a 22 caliber in one carcass. So It's not like all of the carcasses were shot up with 22s. And unfortunately, in this situation, the individuals who did this didn't take any antlers, didn't take any meat. The carcasses, everything was just left to lie there on the hillside. And just
senseless.
And so that's kind of what has sparked so much interest. Is it's just a complete, waste and wanton disregard of these elk, and somebody just shot them and left them there. So
yeah, I think we all have the poachers that shoot something and eat something and catch them. It's almost like the coyote and the sheepdog scenario, and that at least you have a little respect for the guys that are actually going to use it. For those people that just take the trophies or take nothing, I just find that so senseless.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense in this situation.
Yeah, and it angers us as game wardens, and it certainly, in this case, angered the public, didn't it?
Yeah, the public have voiced their opinion multiple times. This has been one of the more popular media topics that have been out there so far this year, for sure.
Right, and that puts a lot of pressure on you, doesn't it, Lieutenant?
It does. I mean, it's great that we get the media is interested and they want to help as much as they can when we're going through an investigation, collecting evidence and doing interviews and different things like that. And the media wants to know what's going on, and they're not patient to let the investigation, work its way through. So that there is some additional pressure put there. Yeah.
And with wildlife crimes, it takes time sometimes. It's not the quick, easy stuff. It's the evidence collecting. And these people don't understand that we go out in the snow, and depending how long these carcasses have been there, they're frozen stiff. You got to thaw them to get that evidence out. You got to process them in the field, which depending on the weather, I've had some blowing snow cases where I'm trying to get a moose out of the woods. That's just insane because we got to thaw it to get evidence.
Absolutely. And this was right during the snow season up in Park City, the ski resorts just across the highway from where these elk were killed. So it was middle of winter, and in this situation, we brought one of our canines down to help see if we, missed any additional evidence and stuff like that. It's just, and because of the snow and because of different factors, we're still working through that process. So.
And will be till spring and summer probably if you don't make it before then.
Yeah, it's literally an ongoing investigation.
Yeah, and it takes time. Even good investigations take time. But anything that you can ask the public to do? I mean, some of these people don't understand what they see sometimes and what they hear sometimes. And then after, arrest is made 9 months down the road or something, they're like, I heard something that night. I thought it was a backfire of a car or something like that. I mean, hopefully we're going to reach out to the public and maybe get some of that critical information that you're looking for.
The public has been really helpful in one regard as far as kind of shortening the time frame as far as when it all went down. So we've gotten a lot of videos, a lot of pictures of the elk while they were alive and different things. So we've narrowed the timeline down quite a bit. So we do have a pretty good idea of when exactly this all went down. It is an interesting area that is Park City is not full of hunters. So they're people that don't necessarily relate to your average hunter and different things like that. So they are even more interested in trying to get to the bottom of this. I think you may have heard about it. There was a GoFundMe account that was created to offer a reward for any information, and it skyrocketed. Last I heard, it was $20,000, and there was a rumor that somebody was going to match it. So it's possible there could be $40,000 on the table.
That's a big step for any investigation that I think any of us have worked, in the new age of GoFundMe and Kickstarter and social media. It seems like the media is hindrance as that can be as far as, how good your investigation is going and not getting in the way of that. It seems like you have a great community. If the media is that supportive, could broadcast that for you, hopefully, and put that to use, and get a bunch of eyes and ears out there with those funds.
Yeah, we've had a lot of different calls on this, and some of them have been helpful, and some of them have just been information that we already knew, but we do have a lot of support from the public, specifically in that Park City area.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
that's a lot to comprehend and to digest too when your phone starts firing off like that. I run the Operation Game Thief program in New Hampshire, and when you get inundated with calls like that, and it's you're looking for that quality information, and it's tough when you get the same call over and over again, but you don't want to discourage it at the same time.
Absolutely. What we've managed to do here is so the officer, the case officer on this investigation, he also has his district that he's got to take care of and other cases and stuff. So, So a lot of the calls that have been coming in have been directed to our administration, to me. I've taken quite a few of these calls, and to so we can kind of sift through that information and see if we can triage a little bit and help send stuff out to the officer that he doesn't know, that's anything new, and stuff that we already have the information on. We kind of just record it and don't necessarily send him off on another wild goose chase trying to track something else down. So,
well, I know they appreciate that.
I'm sure he does. Yes.
Yeah, because getting inundated with phone calls. Yeah, no, that's good. And I have talked to those people. One of the people that started that GoFundMe page, it was up to $21,000, and he does have somebody that will throw in another $20,000, if the information is good to make that happen. So, yeah, there's a potential of $40,000 in rewards, and that turns a lot of people. I mean, if there's multiple people involved, and if I can stay clean and turn in my buddy and make $40,000, maybe that's a deal I want to make. That's I've had that happen. I've had them throw their friends underneath the bus for a monetary gain.
It's it does bring a lot of people with interest out, and the phone lines do kind of go crazy. We have gotten some pretty good information out of it. There's been a couple of license plates that we tracked down that we're still kind of in the process of working on, and like I talked about before, the time frame and stuff like that. So the fact that there is so much interest from the public in this has been more helpful than not. So, and I do think the GoFundMe account has sparked a lot of more interest than it usually would be there.
Well, and I think too, guys, with this GoFundMe account, this is the first case we've heard of something being generated so quickly and so much funds coming in, and it's kind of it's encouraging, to see that much passion for our wildlife, and it may not be coming just from conservationists, but even just outdoor enthusiasts. And it's a great tool that we want to tell more people about in other states where that could make or break a case. Literally, like you said, Wayne, where we've had people turn each other in for some sort of good reward through our CalTIP. Well, we call it CalTIP program out here in California, but the same, retip hotline, Chad, that you had, and Wayne, we've got back east. This just exponentially increases that program's effectiveness, especially in the new age of social media. It's exciting to see this work, and hopefully continues to for this case, especially for you.
Well, and for sure. And in addition to that, our agency does have a reward program, where if we can, if an animal is poached on a limited entry area in Utah, you could be eligible for a tag for that area. Or we do have some monetary amounts, but it goes up to $1,000. So when you compare our reward system to the public's in this case, the public's is much more. There's a lot more interest in the public's than ours. So yeah,
for sure. We were the same way in California, about $1,000 limit. And it works sometimes, but a lot of times just the red tape to get that reward. Sometimes it's just the good-heartedness of that particular reporting party wanting to turn somebody in on a multitude of wildlife violations. But
absolutely,
it wasn't always for the monetary value. But this is a whole different game with this type of funding you're talking about.
Yeah, I actually started a GoFundMe page for a Peregrine Falcon that was shot to have the public engage. So this Peregrine was shot with a .22 as well. We had canvassed the area, and I said, hey, I'm going to throw it out there, do a GoFundMe page. We actually raised several $1,000s in addition to what, and our Operation Game Thief is a nonprofit, so they were going to match everything that we did on the GoFundMe page. So $2,000 would have turned into $4,000, which was a really cool opportunity for us. And I also put in there that anything that, if we didn't find a perpetrator, which we didn't, that the money would go into Operation Game Thief for future cases like this. And unfortunately, the officer, and he always expresses frustration. And I had a wildlife artist actually paint a picture at our annual fundraiser. We do a banquet, and I had him paint a picture of a peregrine falcon because I wanted to tell that story. I wanted, it's the cases that I didn't make that burned me. It's not the cases that I made, like that peregrine. Even though it wasn't my case, I had some skin in the game. Was starting that GoFundMe page, and I was in contact with that officer. He was doing campuses. He recampused. Every bird feeder he was at, because he figures that maybe it was hitting some birds at the bird feeder or taking something out, and someone shot it because of that. He did the best investigation he could, and then we still came up with nothing, and it was frustrating. So it was kind of neat for me to have that, Grant Hacking International Wildlife Artist. Pretty awesome. He did that peregrine falcon, and I told that story at our fundraiser, and it had personal meeting. I bid up $1,000 on it, and I could tell the guy wasn't going to let go. But it became personal, and I think, to the officer that's engaging in this, I bet it becomes personal to him too, because as game wardens, yeah, it's hard to say quit, isn't it, guys?
Especially in a case like this. Big bulls killed with 22s and wasted. That doesn't get any more egregious and just get outrageous on a deep personal level in the game warden community than any case. That's as bad as it gets, aren't you?
Absolutely. It's the officer that I talked to him multiple times. He's frustrated just about the incident, and it's something that I'm sure. Well, there's those times where you just stay up at night thinking about what you could have done better, or what you should do next, and it just leads to some maybe sleepless nights.
There's questions I want to ask that I don't want to ask. Those things that I have personal curiosity as a game warden, but I don't want the general public to know, because I don't want to tip our hand if the poacher happens to get a hold of this podcast and says, oh, that's this or that's that. I don't want to do that, because that isn't what I want to, raise awareness that this is going on. And, our audience is nationwide, Canada. So the odds of us getting that tip, but it sounds like that Park City area is pretty, people are moving in and out of that place all the time to go skiing, aren't they?
Yeah. Not right now because of the virus just kind of shut down the planet, so it is slowed some things down right now. But that is a very popular area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. During the time of the poaching, there was quite a bit of influx and people moving in and around the area.
That's true. Yeah. So it's a busy area.
Yeah, skiing is shut down in the east too. My son got his last runs in the day they closed. So. Yeah. How is the virus going on out in Utah? Lieutenant, and are you guys getting involved anyway? Just out of curiosity now.
Right now, we haven't been asked to get involved as far as a law enforcement presence or anything like that. Our administration's working from home. And officers are while they're still out doing their patrol work and stuff like that, they are suggested to kind of limit contact with people and unless it's something that they do need to get involved with. So it's making a difference here. I don't think we have as many confirmed cases as many places around the country, but it's definitely making a difference here.
Yeah, John's in California, so.
Yeah, and out here, guys, like I was talking to Wayne before the broadcast, Chad, we've, kind of based out of the West Coast for a few more weeks, potentially, just because of all the first responder needs here and family needs. But the biggest thing we're seeing now is more of the panic, from the masses when, the store shelves are empty and this whole, ongoing national there's almost a satire on the toilet paper, problem now, right? And all the different humor jokes popping up on social media. But it's just amazing to see in the urban centers, because I was originally from the Silicon Valley area and based a good portion of my career out on this side, and to see it erode so quickly and see the panic and kind of the, just cutthroat mentality start with people when we don't have I haven't seen a confirmed case. We have quite a few cases in California, but we don't have, confirmed cases necessarily so close to us right here going on that anyone's actually seen. But the panic is alarming. And hence, in the several Bay Area counties where I'm originally from, basically everybody's they're on lockdown from anything non-essential. And if you're not a first responder or a medical professional or in another essential job, and there's a pretty long list of those, you're staying home, and that you're not supposed to be out for anything but going to the grocery store or exercising at good social distance if you need to get out and walk around because of what they anticipate future problems happening almost daily. And that's alarming to see, definitely, when we haven't seen an actual case in our face yet, so to speak.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, the more population you have, the more problems you have. That's why I like living in the woods. The internet sucks, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And actually today it's not too bad. So no, anything in wrapping this interview up, Lieutenant, that we can do more, or get the word out, or just help you guys do your job.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on. This was good. I've been able to talk to quite a few different media outlets specifically about this case, and I think the word is getting out there. It's spreading a lot wider than I initially thought it would, but it's something that obviously the public's interested in, and traditional hunters and people who care about wildlife, are interested in finding out who did this deed. So I think it's you guys are doing a good job, and I appreciate it.
We really appreciate having you on, Lieutenant. And something Wayne and I are going to do with the new Thin Green Line podcast is that there's going to be an opportunity to do a lot more real-time reports where, as we have so many brothers and sisters in the Thin Green Line, coast to coast. I'm kind of on the West Coast majority of my time. Wayne's out there on the East Coast. You're kind of in that Southwest zone, not too far from me. And anybody in between, if we have a case like this, whether it's from your agency or other agencies around the country, that we can discuss it and spread the word and, maybe bring in more information that can help with the case. If nothing else, spread awareness for some of this stuff going on, and our listeners will be on the lookout for it, even if they aren't in the profession, so to speak. And we're really trying to do that won't cost anybody, or will much lower cost than a huge media campaign per se. But we just appreciate you coming on and sharing this so we can hopefully pay it forward on this case and future cases as well.
It's been great. Keep my number if we can be helpful to others in the future. We'll do everything we can as well. So.
Well, I know that the IWC conference will be there in, is it 2021? I think Justin is the second vice president currently. So he's going to be working his way up the ranks. So we'll be in Utah eventually. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully meet you then. So
for sure, I'll be there.
Hey, thanks a lot for coming on, and we will work this, and hopefully we'll have an update. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Let's catch this. I want to say what the guy that said with the GoFundMe page, but I try to keep it clean. But he wants to catch this guy really, really, really bad.
Yeah. Use your power.
I understand 100%.
Yeah. And I'm with him. Hopefully we'll have an update with a score. Thanks again.
No, as soon as if we get an update or when the case progresses that far, we can get back and kind of discuss where we're at. That would be great.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Lieutenant.
Thanks so much, Chad.
Yeah, after doing that interview, John, with Chad, it just it fires me up. I think of all the moose cases that I've been on, the ones I've solved, the ones I haven't, and just the blatantness of all of what they did. It's just it gets under my skins as a game warden, and I guess now as a semi-civilian.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you, Wayne. It's like, even though we're retired, I'm still very passionate. I still feel very embedded in any wildlife crime and wanting to help any way I can, whether, sending the message through our podcasts, all the other public outreach we both do on both sides of the country and throughout. But this one hit home, man. This was a very egregious poaching case. I've had similar big game cases like this, some that a lot of them we solved, some we didn't, honestly. And this is one that needs to get caught. So when everybody hears this podcast and what they can do to help, at least we're giving 110% effort to try to catch these bandits and kind of avenge, the loss of these beautiful elk and the waste of meat and everything else. This is one that needs to be handled, that we need to help on.
Yeah, and it's just awesome that the civilians, people that really like those elk are getting involved, and they're not waiting. They're saying, "Hey, we're going to set up a GoFundMe page. We're gonna drive this up until the guy's brother will turn him in, because it's a big jackpot." And it's funny how friends go by the wayside when money gets involved.
They really do, and usually when you have a den of thieves, there's not a lot of loyalty or ethics or honor, just pointing that out as everybody knows. And you're
Yeah.
right. There's 20,000 on the table, maybe even more soon enough. That's a
Hmm.
big, big reward versus our Cal tip or wheat tip tournament poacher programs we see throughout our states.
Hmm.
Quite an incentive, and I hope it does work, and I think it might.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it does, and hopefully we'll be doing a podcast in the near future with a
Yeah,
success story. That's my hope. So
yeah,
I know it's yours. Oh, nope. Well, this is our first Warden's Watch as a team, man. This is
yeah.
pretty sweet.
This is awesome, man. It's
Yeah.
a little historical moment, and really glad and thanks for having me be part of it. This is going to be fun, and
Yeah.
we're just getting started, man. The snowball's starting to roll.
Absolutely. No, thanks a lot, John. Look forward to the future.